So in this video, I'm going to be looking at this game, Autumn for Barbarossa. It's from Special Ops number 7, and it's a standard combat series, which is designed basically by Dean Essig. He's was a developer on this one. And it covers like August to September, or July to, I guess, July and August of 1941 in the drive on Smolensk. And it covers pretty much the same area as this OCS game, Smolensk, Barbarossa Derailed. And you may have noticed this, that with a lot of the games, if there's a lot of research put into an OCS title, a lot of that same research is then later reused and made into SCS titles. So Autumn for Barbarossa seems to be a standard combat series version of this terrain that's covered. You find the same thing with DAC 2. A lot of the material in them have been turned into standard combat series games like Crusader and Gazala and Africa, North Africa, and Africa 2. So I applaud that. I think that's a great thing. I happen to have both of these games. I've played them both. So anyway, Autumn for Barbarossa's scale is 6 days per turn, I believe, and each hex is 7 miles, and the units are like regiments to divisions. I believe the stacking's 3 units per hex, and it has, what you would expect in SCS. It has disorganized units from barrages and bombardments from artillery or aircraft. It has basic supply trace and effects. It has airstrikes that are provided and sometimes randomly generated at the beginning of the turn. It has garrison units that can be converted to hold areas and free troops to be sent forward in the front. One of the unique rules for the game affects the Germans, and it's called the Hitler withdrawal rules. So it's somewhat random, but programmed at a certain point in the game that you are going to have to withdraw a certain preset number of mechanized forces. So you're going to find out that you need to use these early in the game and get as far ahead as you can before these withdrawals happen. And the victory is determined very simply. It's control of geographic locations, basically strategic city and village locations. And these are all Soviet victory points. So the victory is determined by how many Soviet victory points are held by the Soviets at the end of the game. And if it's a very low number, then the Germans will win. If it's a high number, the Germans will lose. And if it's in the middle, there will be a draw. So there are 10 turns in the game, I believe. And so the game is basically covering 2 months or so of time. So we'll go down to the map and take a look at how this game plays out. So the game begins with turn 1. I have written down here July 9th, 1941. I have no idea if that's the actual date because the turn track is just generic. But the Axis player starts out with a few airstrikes, and I assigned them to assist with the initial attacks. And so they're somewhat effective. I left 3 Soviet units DG'd, and 1 suffered losses from the Stuka attacks. And then the 18th Motorized got into Gorodok, which is a little village on the northern flank. You can see in this picture that the 30th Regiment from the 18th Motorized is on the rail line and the primary road and the track that intersects at Gorodok on the north flank, and they cut the Soviets off there. Then Vitebsk is still controlled by the Soviets. You see the 162nd Infantry Division that is in that city, but it's a relatively weak unit with a 3 defense strength. And the 20th Panzer has a foothold there in the southern part of the city, and because there's a river and a bridge going across there. And then you've got the Soviet 18th Tank Division, which has already taken a beating beating there because you can see it's reduced. This next picture shows Orsha, which is nearly surrounded, but the 1st Mechanized Division is ensconced in there. It's dug into that city. But the 18th Panzer Division has moved up onto the eastern side of the Dnieper River. And also in the farther south, you see that the Axis also controls Sklov with the 71st Motorized Regiment. And the Soviet 53rd Division is surrounded there, and so is not in a very good position. Off map, the Soviet 172nd Division is holed in the city of Mogilev, and the other Soviet units up there have been hit fairly hard by the German attacks, and I don't have a picture of those. But I do have the Soviet units try to fall back to set up an effective defense, and I tried to move the Soviets into the best defensible terrain, but they've got no reinforcements and no airstrikes. So we go on to turn 2, July 15th. So the Soviet 162nd Infantry Division was surrounded at Vitebsk, so I had the Axis forces attack, and the city fell. And as shown in the picture, you can see the 26th Infantry Division and the 59th Infantry Regiment are holding the city of Vitebsk now. And the Soviet 48th tank is off, it's in the center right of the picture. It's surrounded, it's reduced, and so I don't know if it's going to make it. This next picture is showing some of the German forces that are driving right toward Smolensk, and leading the way is the 18th Panzer with the 15th Infantry Regiment highlighted there on top. And then right behind them, you get the 12th Panzer, then the 17th Panzer. And so the Soviets are setting up their defense along this railroad and primary road, and the 17th Tank Division has been damaged and reduced from overruns and from some of this earlier fighting. And this last picture shows the city of Mogilev, which is on the southwestern part of the map. And the Soviet 172nd Infantry Division is there and fights to the last man, and the city is captured by German infantry. And you see the German 17th Infantry Division is in there, and you've also got an SSR regiment that is moving through and has captured the rail line heading east. So this next picture here, number 6, shows the Grossdeutschland in Gorky, and you've got the 29th Motorized along the right near the rail line there, as it has been counterattacked by the Soviet 50th Tank Division along with some supporting forces. And now picture number 7 here is an overview. So if you look at the top left, you see Vitebsk. We saw some battling there. And in the left center, you see a cluster of German units in Orsha. And then on the bottom left is where you see the Germans have captured Mogilev. And then you see how far the penetration is going. You see the Grossdeutschland and Gorky in the left center, lower left center, and then that line of motorized forces that are driving in on Smolensk. So gives us a little bit of an overview at the end of turn 2. We go to turn 3. It's July 21st, and the Axis got 5 airstrikes this time, and not a one of them hit anything. So no damage, just a lot of noise. So I had the Panzer divisions drive forward to the Suez River line in the south. And as shown in this picture number 8, the German forces really don't have enough punch at this point to get into Smolensk, and they're a little bit ahead of themselves. You can see the 29th or the 20th Panzer Division and the 14th Motorized in the top center. And they're trying to come down along that track, and they're getting a little bit of resistance from a Soviet division. You also see how the 7th Panzer and 18th Panzer are somewhat cut off by Soviet forces that have moved in behind them to their west. Photo number 9 here shows the forces south of Smolensk, and you see Roslav, and there are a number of forces that are attempting to be roadblocks north of Roslav, headed up toward Smolensk, and I've got some units at Khrushchev as well that are holding that key junction position. So I'm funneling all of the German forces in the center of this pincher. So we go to turn 4, July 27th, and the Luftwaffe has 8 airstrikes this time. Most of them are ineffective again, but the German army presses onward. This is an overview photo showing the Soviet position to the rear, to the east of Smolensk. And you can see what's happening at Smolensk itself. You have the 18th Panzer Division coming in from the north and the 17th Panzer coming in from the south. We'll see how that works out. In the center left of the picture, you've got the 14th Motorized that has kind of rolled in to Dukov-Shchina and has controlled that junction there, which is an important one to keep the German forces in supply from the west. At this point, I've got the Soviet, and now here in photo 11, we're seeing the area of the map south of Smolensk, and you've got a long line of overextended German forces, but they have captured the a section of that primary road east of that river line. And then, of course, there's some more units coming in from the west along the railroad. So even though the point of the German advance is somewhat threatened, these guys near Khrushchev in the south western part of the map, these Soviets are also in, a threatened position. We go to turn 5, which is August 2nd, and the Axis has 9 airstrikes. Some of them hit, some cause casualties, but the 20th Motorized and the 7th Panzer get into Smolensk, as shown in this picture. It's picture number 12, and a valiant Soviet infantry is holding off the attackers near Khrushchev, which is just out of the picture to the south. And the 12th Panzer also captures Yelnya. Now we go to turn 6, August 9th. The Luftwaffe has 6 airstrikes, but unfortunately, this is one of the turns where Hitler orders a withdrawal. Yes, I rolled a 1. So the German army is thinned out tremendously by this withdrawal. But the operations have to continue. So the Luftwaffe is relied on fairly heavily, and this time it's quite successful, which is making up from earlier turns. The Soviet units suffer a number of casualties. A bunch of them get disorganized, and the Germans manage to take full control of Smolensk. Most of the German turn, I had to clean up the mess after all of these mechanized forces were withdrawn for other areas. So the Soviets counterattacked the 12th Panzer just to the east of Smolensk, and the overrun ends up leaving the panzers heavily damaged, but the Soviet tanks also suffer some damage. And the Soviets have air power too, and they hit some of the German troops at Yelna, and it does some damage. I go on to turn 7, which is August 15th. The Germans get 4 airstrikes. They get several hits. So the disorganized results are helpful. They weaken the Soviets, having their strength, and cause a few casualties in this case. But the Germans managed to recapture Smolensk. So Smolensk has been going back and forth, but the Germans have recovered somewhat from their withdrawal of their mechanized units. So they've got Smolensk again, and they have weakened some of the Soviet mechanized forces. They're still getting some resistance near Krychev, but most of this has been removed. The Soviets get 5 airstrikes, so they're starting to build up their Air Force sorties and now do some targeted attacks, but there's just generally a redeployment of Soviet forces and not so much focus on counterattack. This next picture skips ahead to turn 9, August 27th, and the Luftwaffe is kind of thinning out. They only had 2 airstrikes, both missed. They did launch an all-out attack against the Soviet position near Krychev, and both sides suffered losses, but the village did succumb to the Germans, and the mechanized forces also took a shot at the Soviet position at Gorodobizh, which is roughly in the center of this picture. You see the 29th Motorized is up against the, I think it's the 127th Division. The attack is repulsed, and the Germans suffered some losses here. As you can see, the 29th, the 15th Regiment is reduced. The Soviets used their airstrikes and DG a few of the German attackers, but really have an uneventful turn. So we go on to, this is turn 10, September 2nd. This campaign's winding down, and the Luftwaffe didn't do very much damage, but you can see the end game positions here. The operation to reclaim Belyi, which trying to see where that is on the map here. It's hard to see because you can't see the name on it. It's covered up by counters, but at the very top of the picture toward the right side, you'll see a couple of German units that are somewhat surrounded on a track that leads down to a railroad line end, and that is Belyany, and which I believe is a victory point location. If I remember correctly, it is, and it's a 1-point location. So there was a little bit of effort there, but the 102nd Tank survives an assault in the nearby Safonofo, and basically the Soviets stand up against all of the last-ditch efforts because it is the last turn of the game. The Soviets have 2 air missions. They hit the units at Yelnya, and then they do a full attack on that village, in the area of that village, and they are repulsed and suffer heavy losses. So it brings the game to an end. You can see the big variable is when the Germans lose the mechanized, because they can drive east as hard and fast as what they need to do, and then be ready to stabilize what you've gained when all those troops, those mechanized troops, get hauled away. One of the other things that happens in this game that you should do is you should be attacking as the Germans, and I didn't do this enough, but I should have been attacking and getting German mechanized units destroyed, because if they're destroyed, they can't be pulled off the map when Hitler recalls them. But they can be rebuilt at half strength and reconstituted. So those are the best ones to be losing while you're trading them for ground. But the way this ended, you count up the victory points. These are all Soviet victory points, so however many they have left after the Germans are done with them determines the level of victory. And I counted up that the Soviets have 22 victory points, which means it falls in the range of a draw. So that's how this game turned out. It's a draw. It's a fun game. This is, again, Autumn for Barbarossa in Special Ops Journal number 7, Standard Combat Series. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.